My name is Leslie Loftus. I am part of the National Major Gifts team, and I'm up here with my counterpart, Whitney Wood Norman, and we make up 2 of 5 Major Gifts officers out of your national office. So today we're going to talk to you guys about research, and I know that this is something that seems to be a very big hot button for everybody, all of us out into the field right now. So we really have 2 main objectives today, and the first one, of course, is going to be, number 1, gain an understanding of our new innovative approach to the said research. So we're going to talk to you guys about what is transdisciplinary research and how does that really affect you in your day-to-day work, and also how are the 5 prematurity research centers collaborating with one another internally as well as across those state lines. Of course, we're going to also run through some of the brilliant investigators. We're going to look at some videos today as well. And we're going to look at some of the inquiry areas that they are focusing on. Again, those themes. And lastly, what's the impact that they're making right now? Where do we stand? Where are we going? So, talking about the research then and now, you know, we all know very well our history. We know that FDR founded us in '38. We know that we cured polio. So, of course, all of us in this room are here because we have an infinite amount of passion about our mission. And the next thing that we are going to eradicate, of course, is going to be prematurity. And that's where the campaign to end premature birth really comes into play. We raised $25 million over 17 years in the 30s. So now our goal is going to be $75 million in 3 years across all of our nation. Okay, so next up, we're going to start watching those promised videos. We're going to talk about why prematurity research centers. So of course, for us to know where we're going, we have to know where we come from. How did this whole thing come into play? That's where this video is going to take us. These are our friends at Stanford.
The March of Dimes, leader in medical breakthroughs, is joining forces to put an end to premature birth. Transdisciplinary innovation is underway at Stanford University. 130 researchers, exceptionally diverse backgrounds, combining their power to find the root causes of premature birth, the hardest issue of our day. Breaking new ground, making new science, funded by the March of Dimes to put an end to this crisis. Investing in the premier wellspring of intellect in the heart of Silicon Valley. Extensive, unlimited, transformative research in pursuit of the answer at Stanford University.
There's something for all of us about birth and about the beginning of life that to many of us feels as though it matters so much in terms of determining everything else that happens.
Premature birth is one of those vexing problems that a single line of investigation won't solve.
The Prematurity Research Center at Stanford University is so vital and so important because it's going to be a wellspring of new information.
Creating a transdisciplinary center like this is a brand new way to think about doing science. This is a completely different approach here.
We knew that we needed anthropologists. We knew we needed social scientists. We knew that we needed people who do complex systems and evolutionary biology to help us think this through.
The transdisciplinary approach is the right one because there's not going to be an answer even from just one field. This is such a complex, multifaceted problem.
That's where I really think the March of Dimes is here to help us.
This is not a short-term proposition. If it were simple and short-term, someone would have figured it out. And so what they've done is they said, we're going to invest in a place that can assemble all the intellect that's required from any discipline that might seem relevant and give you the time to figure this out and fix it.
The task is a big one, but the mission is clear and couldn't be more important.
So what I work on is the microbiome, which is the community of microbes that live on and in the human body.
We believe that one possible cause, contributing cause to premature labor, is a disturbance that occurs at one or more of the microbial communities in the body during pregnancy that then causes disease to occur.
Our area of inquiry is pattern recognition discovery, and our objective is to examine these large data sets. It's data and it's number crunching and you're running your algorithms, but every one of those data points is a baby, every one of them.
This is the output of 400 plus scientists. I lead what's called an inquiry area, and specifically I'm looking at gene-environment interactions. The idea is to come up with the genes and the environmental factors that together we can start to understand why we're having this problem, and then use that as a predictor in the future to predict who might get this problem so we can intervene sooner. I was never doing research in this field before this center came about. I feel like I'm making a difference now.
The hope is that we'll come up with some really interesting, important, previously ignored factors and mechanisms and approaches and interventions that can improve upon this problem.
This is both remarkable, it's wonderful, but it's also an intense burden. We understand the risk people have taken. We understand the strategic importance of the investment that they're making in us. Every single day, we are doing everything we can, trying to figure out the best way to utilize these resources to reach our goal. We take it very seriously.
I think this is one of the most exciting things I've ever done.
One can only be excited about the potential here.
Their enthusiasm for it is infectious. And when you ask them how it has changed how they view their research area, they get really excited.
You can be in at the ground floor at founding the newest approach to transdisciplinary research, team science. It's for that entrepreneur within you, for that person who really wants to make an impact. This is an incredibly attractive, I believe, place to put your philanthropic energy. And I think we'll look back decades from now and say, you know, I can't believe there was a time where there wasn't transdisciplinary research, where these programs didn't exist at every major university, and where the systems for collaboration and governance and incentive, didn't that always exist? And you will have made that happen. Be a part of it.
It's exciting stuff. So we're going to expand upon that, and now it's my turn to turn it over to Whitney, and she's going to talk to us all about the research.
Thank you. All right, so I get to do the fun stuff. I love talking to groups about research. I will say this is my first time ever coming to Summer Staff Conference. I think that's why Staren asked me to speak and knew I would say yes because I didn't know how many people would be here. So now we know. We could just dim the lights so it's a little more flattering. But I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to share this great work with you all. I'll be honest, I think a lot of us probably shy away from talking about research a little bit when it comes to our conversations with our boards and our donors and our volunteers, because research is confusing and it's hard and it's high level. And what we want to do today is get everybody comfortable talking about the research, because when you hear what we're doing today, what we're doing as an organization, the journey that we're moving towards, you're going to want to share this with your volunteers. This is something they're going to be excited about. Short of mentioning surfactant therapy, I don't think they hear a lot about what we're investing in on the research front, and this is exciting stuff. The research we are investing in today will be the vehicle that drives our mission home. This will be the means by which we're able to check off another box on our mission to-do list. And it's exciting stuff, and you were all a part of it. They said it right there on the video. So let's take a deeper look at what we're doing here. We as an organization at March of Dimes are embarking on a historical campaign to end premature birth. we have launched the first ever network of prematurity research centers that are dedicated to finding the underlying fundamental causes of preterm birth. Why is this happening? Why is it in that nearly half of the cases when a baby is born too soon, mom did everything right and the baby still came early? A report was released in The Lancet in 2013 by the March of Dimes that showed with all of the interventions that we know now, with all of the knowledge and all the medical advancements that we have now, if we were to utilize every intervention that we have discovered to date, we would not be able to reduce our preterm birth rate below 9.1%. That's it. We will stop at 9.1%, and we won't be able to get any further down that spectrum. And the reason is we have to invest in the why. We've got to get in front of this problem, and we've got to support our prematurity research centers in understanding what's causing it. So what we have done is we have brought together a method. Well, not me personally. This is a little above. I'm not a science major, so a little above me there. But the March of Dimes prematurity research centers are using an approach called transdisciplinary research. Now, transdisciplinary research, or as we prefer to call it, team science, it's much easier to pronounce. Team science is a method in which, in our case, over 300 investigators from leading research institutions and hospitals from across the country are coming together and they are collaborating on one issue, preterm birth. These individuals are stepping out of their typical silos. This is in no way a traditional method of research. And we have to do research this way because premature birth is so complex. There are so many interactive biological and environmental factors at play. We've got to come at this thing from all fronts, and that's really how we're doing it. So we have these 300 investigators that are truly breaking down all barriers to discovery. They are learning to speak each other's language. I'm sure you can understand an engineer and a neonatologist probably didn't speak the same language when they first sat down at a conference room table together. But they're finding that common language, and they're truly collaborating to gain an understanding of what's happening here. So we've brought together the traditional folks that you would think would be working in reproductive medicine, your neonatologists, your obstetricians, your pediatricians, your geneticists, but then they're also collaborating with folks that you wouldn't typically think would be working on this type of work, but they are because it's a factor here. So we have social and behavioral scientists, we have engineers, we have artificial intelligence, we have anthropologists, we have all of these brilliant minds coming together and talking. What are all the areas that we can address if we all step out of our typical silos and we talk to one another? This work is so innovative, in fact. I think something that you should all be thrilled about, and we actually just heard from some of the investigators at Stanford. But the way that we are conducting medical research as an organization, this innovative transdisciplinary team science approach, is so unprecedented that the social scientists at Stanford University are actually studying our investigators. They're documenting every publication that comes out, how the voice in those publications evolve over time from one voice to multiple voices now collaborating on that work. And they're making note of all the changes throughout this. From the time that Stanford launched in 2011 till our last PRC just came on, our Prematurity Research Center just came on this year in 2015, they're documenting every interaction. And the reason being is that this transdisciplinary model will become a subject matter taught in academia going forward and will redefine the way medical research is conducted. So not only are we going to impact our own mission, and we absolutely will make a tremendous impact on our own mission, we're going to change the way medical research is conducted in cancer and Alzheimer's and MS. We're having a huge impact here, and that's something that you're all a part of. So it's an exciting time for us as an organization. I think it's really obvious to see why we are so excited and why we are so passionate about this work. But I want to take a quick second so that you guys can hear from one of our centers and why they got involved.
The driver is really the faculty that we have recruited here to Penn who have their strengths and expertise in particular areas. And we have a core group of faculty members with an interest in adverse pregnancy outcomes and in particularly preterm birth. And so Dr. Elovitz and Dr. Perry have been leading those efforts now for over a decade. We have other research interests in cancer, reproductive biology, epigenetics and reproduction, but preterm birth is one of our signature programs, and we try to pick areas of research to focus on that are big problems, big challenges for us, right? So preterm birth is a major public health issue, given the number of babies that are born preterm in this country every year and the cost of caring for preterm infants over their lifetime. So it remains a major public health issue for us, one that's very important to our specialty, and that's really what drove our interest in preterm birth.
I've got to say, our investigators that we are working with are the best and brightest in all of their fields. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a few of the Prematurity Wednesdays that they do out of Stanford University and hear some of the conversations that these folks have. And candidly, I spend most of the meetings smiling and nodding, like I know what's being said. But towards the end of the meeting, they always summarize and say, this is what we're seeing, this is what we hope to accomplish, and this is how we're going to get there. There's always a game plan. There's always a means to the ends. They know what they're doing and how to accomplish this end game. So let's take a look at some of where our prematurity research centers are located. So we have the first center that launched in 2011, and that's out of Stanford University. The second just followed in 2013 by the Ohio Collaborative. So the Ohio Collaborative is made up of the University of Cincinnati, Case Western, and Ohio State. Go Buckeyes. And then our next two centers launched last year in 2014, the University of Pennsylvania and WashU in St. Louis, followed by our most recent addition to the Prematurity Research Center family, which is the group of Duke Northwestern and University of Chicago in Illinois. So, like I said, this is growing very, very quickly, and the excitement behind the work that's happening and the momentum we're seeing in the research that's coming out of these centers already is very quick. And the greatest asset that you have when you sit down in front of your volunteers is to be able to show them you are a part of a train that is going in the right direction, and we are going to see this mission through. We have a very real opportunity here to see the end of preterm birth in our lifetime. I mean, that is, Dr. Howe said it best when she said, this is our legacy, folks. This is something we all get to be a part of, and it's by supporting the effort that's happening right here. Something interesting to take a look at the bottom of the slide here, this isn't even a complete list anymore. We have more institutions that have come on board even since the slide was created. But in addition to our 5 prematurity research centers, we also have over a dozen other collaborating institutions, lead researching institutions in the country that are raising their hand and saying, we want to be a part of this. We get the big picture here. This is important. We want some skin in the game, and we want to help. And so investigators from across the country at Vanderbilt and at UT Southwestern and at Texas A&M and at Columbia and at Mount Sinai, they're raising their hand and saying, let us help you find these answers. And our investigators are smart enough to know where additional skill set is needed, and they're happy to call upon that just to make sure that we have the best outcome here. I think something interesting to look at here is, aside from these centers being selected because they are the best and brightest and have the capacity and the skill set to do this work, also their geographic location is really important. Having the PRCs spread out in this way, I need to stop saying PRCs, prematurity research centers. Having them spread out in this way allows for a really diversified data set. So we're not getting skewed data in some of the studies and things that are going on. We're able to get a complete picture of the demographic and environmental factors at play. So we want to take a quick second to introduce you to one of our lead investigators who is brilliant and incredibly passionate. And I think the way she talks about the centers is something you can't miss.
So in med school, I had a big, my 2 choices that I was left with before you have to decide was being a surgeon or an obstetrician. And I loved surgery. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. You got to do things and then you fix things, right? I think a lot of us as physicians, and especially as physician scientists, I want to fix things. And so I wanted to fix, and surgery allowed you to do that. And I remember debating between surgery and obstetrics. And it was really obstetrics for me, not as much gynecology. Taking women through a pregnancy and delivering a baby was one of the coolest things I'd ever done. And I remember sitting there thinking, and I was doing an extra rotation in surgery because I was just so enthralled with it. And looking, there was at the time, I'm going to show my age, instead of being an electronic board, there was a written board with chalk about what cases were next. And there was this female surgeon who was a mentor who I really thought was just wonderful. And I looked, and on her list for the day was the same surgery about 10 different times. And I had this like epiphany. Oh my God, in 5 years, I'm going to be bored out of my mind. And I realized then that the field of obstetrics and women's health in general was an ever-changing field, and every patient was different, and every pregnancy was different. And then I discovered maternal fetal medicine, which was this more critical care intensive approach to pregnancy, and it just made complete sense for me. And I think it fulfills not just my desire to be a clinician, but also just my non-medical need to help women's health in general and women's care.
I like to show that video because I feel like it gives a really good picture of just how passionate our investigators are. They are just as committed to finding the answers to preterm birth and uncovering these real fundamental problems, same as we are. So to have a partner like that in this fight it's incredibly motivational and it's exciting. This is by far my favorite infographic, and I'm going to put on my nerd hat because I think this information is really interesting. What we have here is a list of the key inquiry areas that have been defined that we need to gain an understanding about in order to understand the underlying causes of preterm birth. There are 10 identified inquiry areas, and you guys are going to have the opportunity in a few minutes to dig a little deeper here, so be excited. But what you can see here in this infographic is amongst our 5 prematurity research centers and these 10 inquiry areas, there is a whole lot of overlap, which means that in identifying which prematurity research centers were the best for this type of work, they had to be able to collaborate, they had to be able to work together, and they had to be incredibly nimble. So these prematurity research centers are virtual in nature, which allows them to be ever-evolving and nimble. And as we have things that are working well, let's move in that direction. When we hit a road that maybe isn't so promising, let's move away from it. Let's focus on what's working well and understand what's not necessarily going to get us to our end game. And the way that they're working together in these various areas is really how we're going to get to that end game. If you look at a few of the things that are on here, the areas that we're looking at, environmental factors, the body's microbiome. You heard Dr. Relman explain a little bit earlier about the microbiome and the germs and bacteria living on and in our bodies and how they interact and how that is an indicator of preterm birth. The video that we showed because it's a really great look at this campaign overall, but it is a little bit older. So since that video was created, actually, David Relman's research has had some really promising findings. When the research began, they enrolled, over the sum of this study course, they enrolled over 300 women into a trial study. And most of these women had the intention of getting pregnant. And throughout the pregnancy, they asked these women to submit 5 bodily samples before, during, and after pregnancy. And these are, various bodily samples to see what the bacterial makeup was going to be in their different microbial communities, the different communities interacting with this bacteria. And at the conclusion of the study, they took all of this bacterial data and they threw it up on a map and said, okay, where are we seeing actual patterns here? And what they found is, in nearly every incidence when the baby was born too soon, when there was a premature birth outcome, there was a clear pattern in the bacterial makeup, which means identifying a pattern means being able to identify an intervention. And where we've kind of been at a miss in the past is that we haven't been able to necessarily see what premature birth looks like until it happens. And now this is an opportunity to take a sample and know this woman's at high risk way before we even get to labor. And I mean, when it comes to bacteria, something that's so cool, and this is obviously very hypothetical, but you think about when you have a stomach ache and you can eat some, Activia or whatever that yogurt is, that Bifidus regularis. And the bacteria, it actually helps realign the bacteria in your stomach and in your intestinal tract and makes you feel better. And you're, TMI, but you're regular and you feel better, and the bacteria the cultural change in the yogurt made that happen. So I mean, how exciting is it to think that potentially, if you were to do a test on a mom and you saw that this is what her bacterial makeup looked like, you could give her some sort of yogurt or cultural product that would help shift that bacteria and give her a better opportunity to full term pregnancy. It's just really exciting work that's being done. Earlier you heard a word, cervical imaging. I couldn't have put it any better than imaging of the cervix. And really the work that's being done in cervical imaging is so crucial to what we're trying to understand here. Our investigators out of WashU are actually collaborating really closely with the investigators at UT and at Texas A&M, and they're looking at cervical remodeling. So they believe that how and why the cervix changes over time is a predictor of preterm birth. The only way to see how and why a cervix is changing is to develop a next generation imaging device to be able to take clearer images and see what's going on in there. And that's what they're doing. Above and beyond that, at WashU, they're working with cardiovascular specialists to mimic the technology behind the pacemaker to control the heart in the uterus to control contractions. I mean, these folks are brilliant, and they are finding incredible things very quickly by collaborating with one another. So I encourage you all to share some of these updates, some of these exciting research findings with your volunteers, because they'll be just as thrilled as we are about it. So within each of these inquiry areas, there are a handful of research themes that are happening at every prematurity research centers. I just told you about 3 of them. And it is that easy to just talk about what's happening in these themes. The most important reason that we do research are these folks. This is our why. This is why we need to understand what's causing preterm birth so that we can bring it to an end, so that there's not a 9.1 stopping point, that we can eliminate preterm birth completely and allow all of these families the opportunity at a full-term healthy pregnancy. So let's take a second and meet the Macklins.
When Carter was born, we were excited first-time parents, to be expecting our first baby together. He was born at 29 weeks, much of a shock to our family. Since then, we've gone on to have 2 more full-term babies. We were shocked, obviously, to be here. We were planning a natural birth and had all our birth plan in place, and when my water broke at 29 weeks, all the plans that we made were sort of thrown out the window. They initially thought that maybe there was a clot in the umbilical cord, and after pathology reports, they found that to not be true. They know my water broke early, and we asked, well, why does something like that happen 3 months early when I was in excellent health, we did everything we were supposed to do, and this still happened? And they said they think that there was an infection in the outer bag of water. And I said, well, how does that happen? And they said that's the #1 question as to why this happens. So for us, we still have no answers as to why Carter was born. To have an answer as to why babies are born early, at least with our situation, would be immeasurable. I mean, it's to know why babies are born early and to be able to prevent that would take so much stress and medical care away from families and put somewhere where it needs to be put. My 2 full-term children, both of their hospitalization and birth expenses were less than $20,000 combined. So we've got Carter at close to $2 million and 2 full-term babies at less than $20,000. So medical expenses would decrease phenomenally. With Carter, we spent 74 days every day in the hospital. I came to the hospital every day, held him for 12 hours a day, wishing for him, hoping and praying for him to get better. Drove 30 minutes every day to visit him in the hospital. And never once with my full-term children did I sit by their bedside and wish and pray for them to make it through the night.
I just hope this project thrives, and once we get it started continues to be a success, and one day we find a cure for prematurity.
So just as we're wrapping up today, we just wanted to kind of recount what the point of today was: getting comfortable talking about research, sharing our story with your volunteers, And coming to us if you need additional support in those conversations as well, because we love to be able to share this work. Make sure you check out prematurity.research.org. You will find absolutely everything and more about the Prematurity Research Centers, the principal investigators, the inquiry areas, the themes. So make sure to take a look at that and find a way to use this research and these findings in your everyday conversation. We appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we look forward to more research conversations with y'all.